Welcome back to A Bevy of Bloods as we talk through the elimination final loss to end our 2023 season. Summer has come early, but not because of only global warming, but also the way we were seen out by the Blues at the MCG in the last game of the year for the Swannies. So fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a potentially biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved Bloods. G'day there, Cygnets and Swanlings. My name is Chris, and I'm joined again by my man, Noddy. Noddy, welcome back, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Look, let's get stuck right into it as we go into what is the final game for the men's season. Score recap. Last week ago, our Sydney Swans were defeated by the Carlton Blues by 6 points with a final score of 11-8, 74 to 9-14, 68. Noddy, what do you have to say about that elimination final loss? I can't even say the words because it upsets me. But the elimination final loss to the Blues, mate, what have you got to say?
Look, obviously, we've let a bit of time lapse between then and now. I think emotionally probably needed to leave a bit of time between, but you know, in the wake of the game itself, I mean, I was absolutely gutted, absolutely livid at the circumstances. Again, in that, you know, we had chances to win and didn't really take it. But we showed a lot of guts. We were down at half time, down by 29, and then we obviously pushed to come back within a goal. But yeah, kicked two goals, 5 in the last quarter. So really should have won. That's not saying that they didn't have their chances too. Obviously, Harry McKay missed a couple of sitters, and the things that could have gone either way. But look, it's disappointing that we couldn't get that win, and it's obviously disappointing we couldn't stop this growing VFL media snowball where they're almost willing Carlton to win because they just can't help themselves when it comes to like a little fairy tale ending. So, and you get the vibe that they're pushing for a Carlton and Collingwood final, but I think we're going to get into that more as the episode plays out. But look, obviously gutted, the season's over. Happy we made finals in our own controversial ways. But yeah, you can't help but feel we left a little bit out on the field that day. So yeah, mixed emotions, mate.
Yeah, mate, I'm the same. Look, I hate the Blues song. It's such a bad song. It bothers me that they keep that song at the tempo it's at, and everything about that song is awful. I hate hearing it. I kind of feel a little bit guilty for a bit of this because I don't know if you remember, Noddy, I think when we beat them in round 11 or so, I did mention at the time, and you called me up on it, but I was like, I feel a little bit bad for their fans having to deal with all of this all these years. And you were like, don't do that, mate, because the second that they start getting up, they're going to be so annoying.
Yeah.
What are you, Nostradamus, mate? You picked it perfectly because as soon as they started winning, they started becoming frustratingly annoying. Like the whole of Vic Media, as you said there, got on the back of them. They, SEN had their own cast exclusively for them. It just became frustrating. And so to have 99% of the fans at the MCG to be to be Blues fans, there was very few Swans fans in amongst it. And there was a whole lot of things going in their direction. It actually frustrates me. So to go out like the way we did, where we had a genuine chance, and as you said, they kicked 2-5 in the last quarter, and we could have gotten up. It's a bit disappointing, and although it's an up and down season, you remember, and this is a review of that game, so we're allowed to feel the emotion of that game, and we can put into greater context of the entire season in the season review podcast that we'll put out in a couple of weeks. But right now, it hurts, and just trying to move on. And if we're going to use a couple of quotes from Horse, he said it's tough to get to the finals every year, and right now I feel that we gave it a good crack. I think that's a decent summary of where we've gotten to, and yeah, we're just going to have to move on and work out what to do for the rest of this year with the girls out there as well. And there's a whole lot of talking points to be had about what that means in the off season as well that we'll get into. All right, mate. Look, on to the good, the bad, and the stats. Any points on your side that we felt was worthwhile talking about?
Oh, mate, I'll just take this top one here, minus 25 in contested possessions. I mean, this is probably the stat of the year. And as you said, we'll do a review of the season in a couple of weeks. But just it seems to be the theme, even with our run home, our winning run home, we're just getting over the line. And, in games where we can, nullify the contested possession differential, we did quite well. But in games that we lose, we're putting ourselves under pressure. And this really is the thing that I think we need to tackle for the off season. But it was the same in this game. They had obviously all their star-studded midfield really with their role players, and they sort of, I think they just they got it done. So I think that's. I mean, it's hard for me because a bit of time has lapsed, but I just remember thinking, we weren't dominant. Not that we're expecting to be, but we're hoping that we could have at least been a bit more impactful in that area, and not being able to be that was probably one of the contributing factors to the loss in the end. Not the sole one, obviously. The accuracy really hurt us, but I don't know, mate. How about you?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think the minus 25 contested possessions was a major factor. As you said, we weren't necessarily expecting to win that. Perhaps I think that that's their game. That's what they're very, very good at. And Cripps kind of leads that inside. But I think we didn't necessarily do a good job of stemming it either. And, using an example like Heaney played on Cripps in the first game that we played against him in round 11 or whatever it was. And he did a pretty good job. I think he ended up collecting all the biscuits in terms of coaches' votes or whatnot. So, in this last game in the elimination final, he only went in for like 30% centre bounce attendance, and I thought that would have been well up. I felt that he would have been useful to use in the inside a bit more, considering that success that he had over Cripsy in our first game. So that's something to consider about it all. One of the other points, and I'd be interested to hear what you think about it, is Juzzy and Melican coming in for Francis and Stevens, respectively, and Foxy. Oh, yeah, Foxy, of course, big one there. I didn't see them as really being factors for the game. How did you feel? Did we feel that we kind of missed the point there of selection?
Look, I don't know. I think it's easy to say it now, but in the lead up, it seemed like in terms of matchups, it was a better call. And maybe they were both a bit underdone. Although Melican's had been playing for a few weeks by that stage. I think Juzzy was more underdone. But they both had their moments. They weren't the only ones to feel like they were succumbing to the pressure of finals, even though we have all this finals experience. I think about it. It's like we really should have won the game. We were underdogs. We had the final experience, but as you said, there was only a few splashes of red in the crowd, unfortunately, and that's kind of the challenge of coming, 7th or 8th. Obviously you want to try and finish top 4 to have 2 bites, but if you're going to finish in 5, 6, 7, 8, you want to be 5th or 6th, so you can at least have a home final. And maybe things would be different if we'd gotten to play at the SCG. But obviously, you and I, we couldn't make it down. Obviously, so but we weren't the only ones who weren't there. It was overwhelmingly Navy in the crowd, wasn't it? So, these sorts of things run through your head as well. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. But I don't know. It's
I just feel with Foxy, that's a particular one because I think he's a last elimination final loss that we had against the Giants. I think we lost by the 1 or 2. I think it was just the 1. Where Foxy also didn't play that game. There's 2 in a row, and I just feel that he was a bit of a sad one to miss out because he's been playing pretty good for this year, and we know how well he is at stemming the stats for some of the players that he plays on. Yeah, I felt that selection was a bit concerning. But as you said, leading up into it, having Melican in a bigger body against some of their players did make a lot of sense. So, coulda, woulda, shoulda. Easy to understand that. But, it is what it is. We kind of roll on with the rest of it.
It's very clear, though, if you just isolate that one move in terms of dropping Fox, and as you said, it's happened before, it's very clear that Cunningham is above Fox in the pecking order, just for that small lockdown role. And obviously with Rampy fit, then Fox is the first one to go there. But if you're thinking to put a bigger body, on the likes of McKay, but I mean he wasn't really influential in the game after all. But I mean, had he kicked those two, as we mentioned, then you'd say differently. So yeah, look, I don't know, mate. Obviously Blakey, I think, is a talking point.
Absolutely, yeah.
So Martin basically gives him a right hook straight to the face. He goes off for 20 minutes. We lose one of our best players in the first quarter for that length, and obviously subject to HIA, but does come back on and helps us. Is one of the reasons we were able to claw our way back. And then Martin eventually only gets 1 week. Is that right?
That's right. He only got the 1 week, and I mean it's kind of a bit funny. Like he went in swinging, aiming for the head as far as I'm concerned, and he flushed him, and he went out for concussion protocol, and you never know, he could be playing on with a concussion. I feel that our doctors are quite aggressive when it comes to that stuff. I think they're quite on top of it. They're not going to even take a 50-50 chance. We've seen that throughout the season. But nonetheless, bit of a weird call to see him with 1 week, and everyone calling out for, I know we're talking about a different game here, but Tom Green, and giving a little bit of a touch to the solar plexus of a player, and they're calling for him to sit out a week. Two very, very different situations, and one significantly more impactful than the other. But it all kind of came together. So I think maybe a week is somewhat fair in the scheme of things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. If Blakey doesn't come back on, then really it's probably more like a 3 to 4 week.
That's right.
Type sanction.
It's the action, not the results, right? So, but it isn't at the same time. So, yeah, it's a good call, mate. I think missing Blakey for a period there might have cost us a few points. Definitely, I think they scored 7 or 8 points on the top of that with a goal in the middle of it. So, yeah, could have been a different story if we'd had him. One of our probably our most consistent back, most important back for the year, given all the time off for some of the others. That would have been a different story, I felt.
Yeah, I mean, who knows, mate? 1-5 in the first quarter.
That did it for us.
They were 3-2, so, it's a bit hard to say, isn't it? But, yeah, look, I don't know. I think, have you got a point there on Hayward?
Yeah, I kind of felt like there's been a bit of rev up about what Hayward did to let a goal through for Cottrell. What happened was, I think, it might have been Charlie Curnow kicked the ball, just around the square, and ball bounced to the ground, and it just happened to be Hayward running back to have an opportunity to kind of mop it up. He was stretched out pretty hard, fell to his knees, missed the ball, and they ended up collecting it and kicking a goal, which on the back of what seemed like a bit of a mistake. And I've heard and I've seen a few people trying to light him up on the back of it, but he was in the defensive goal square. He plays forward. That's hard work to get back there. So I just wanted to go out there and just give a bit of love out to him, to be like, okay, yeah, you know what, it didn't keep his feet, but he'd also probably sprinted for a good 100 meters to get there, to put on a bit of help in that back line when we very much needed it. And yeah, wouldn't have probably got the ball anyway, but it is what it is. So it's happened. So just a bit of love to Hayward. It's a bit unfair that he's kind of copped abuse, I think, on the back of that one.
Yeah, mate. I think that's pretty much it for me in terms of stats. I mean, the big one's accuracy, really. I mean, and if we're jumping ahead to current day, then obviously since then Melbourne's gone out in a very similar fashion against the Blues,
Right.
And probably worse than us, kicking 9-17 or whatever they kicked, and we're 9-14. So, pretty lucky Carlton, hey, if you think of that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, you can't sort of change the numbers in terms of behinds, but it's sort of all it's how the game goes within the game, and the way that the crowd is reacting, the way that the umpires are seeing the calls. I don't know. It's just interesting that 2 games have gone Carlton's way now. So
yeah, both in that way you said, but
yeah,
kicking 1-5 in the first quarter and then 2-5 in the last quarter, that's going to do it to you. So. We had the opportunity, right? And we didn't take it. But as you said, the crowd and everything kind of comes into it at the same time. So
yeah,
it is what it is. Look, do we want to go over a few favourite moments, mate? Do you have a couple on your side that we want to talk through?
Oh, look, my recollection is of just Errol and kicking 2 amazing goals and just losing my shit at that point. But that's kind of it for me, if I'm going to be honest. McLean did a few good things as well. A couple of really good clunks throughout. But over to you, mate.
Yeah, look, I'm just going to point out a couple quickly. Two good ones and one, I think, a bit of a missed opportunity, missed scene. Wixie had a good game. He was all over the shop. He was really nutting down, putting a lot of pressure onto players there. But him kicking 0 and 2 in front of goal, it's just been a bit of a trend of his. It's just, if he starts to kick straight, I think we really start getting excited. And some of those goals that we could get from that pressure forward, given that he has the opportunity to kick those, it would be massive. So I kind of foresee a good year for him for next year is what my quiet point is there. The other one I've got is Blakey had this incredible one-handed contested mark to get the ball back inside the 50 to give us another shot at it. So just really happy with that one. That was just a superb moment under the most amount of pressure you could ever imagine, and he did the job. But one missed opportunity, Wiedering, he had 7 one-on-ones and he only lost the one. He was phenomenal for them, and I just feel that we may have been, I think we just kind of lent it to him. We kept kicking it to get everyone in a bit of perspective. The next highest was McCartan with 3 one-on-ones. So he had over twice as many one-on-ones with the respective player, and he won 6 of those 7. So we really didn't do a good job of making sure he was out of the game. In fact, we kept feeding him, and I think that would have gone a long way for us to have more opportunities in front of goal as well. All right, look, moving on to the Bob Medal, which is the Bevy of Blood's equivalent of the Bob Skilton Medal. We give out 3-2-1 points to the best Swans players. And this week, they get to get themselves a little... What do they have in Balinese? What's the Balinese money of choice? What's the denomination?
The currency?
Yeah, what is it?
Bali bucks, I think, mate. No, I have no idea. Is it the... Rupee? No, I don't know. This is
you're right. It's Indonesian rupiah. Okay, so they get a few more INR or IDR. I think it's INR, Indonesian rupiah, heading in their direction. So let's throw in another, I don't know, Hanji, which I presume is about $5. So anyway, we'll work it out. 3, 2, 1, 3 points for McLean, 2 points for Goulden, and 1 point to McCartan. Mate, do you want to take it away with McLean's stat points?
Yeah, mate. So obviously off the back of his 4-year extension, he really played a cracker. 9 score involvements, 5 inside 50s, which was second for the Swans. 19 disposals, which is pretty high for the position he's playing. 10 contested possessions within that. 12 marks, which is best on ground. 3 contested marks, best for the Swans, and 7 1%ers. So an all-round very good game from McLean, and really he was one of a handful of players that looked like, winning it for us at a point. But how about you, mate? Did you you thought he had a good game?
Yeah, I think with the eyes, I mean, we saw him, as you mentioned earlier, in the body, just clunking marks like no one's business, and a lot of them pretty special for us. And he was up against some pretty big boys, and Tom de Koning as an example of that, Harry McKay and whatnot, they were competing up against him, and he was winning the majority of them. So yeah, massive stuff from McLean, really happy with the way he played. And as you said, to play that quality after signing a long extension is, I think, telling of the kind of effort that he's going to be putting in for us. And an amazing year, definitely a big year, the biggest year for McLean, and he's hoping that it continues on. Right, 2 points for Gordon. I'll quickly just crack this one out. The 2 goals are very, very timely, as you mentioned earlier, and beautiful goals, and just sharp shooter as we know he can be. 23 disposals with 20 of them being kicks, the best for the Swans at 83%. So he was super sharp and got plenty of the ball. 564 metres gained, second for the Swannies behind Lloydie, and 7 score involvements, second on ground. So Gordon just continues to rack up those points, and there we say probably wraps up the best and fairest and the Bob Medal at this point. But we are not going to give away the tallies quite yet. We'll do that in the season review. But yeah, super special. Do you have anything to say about Gordon and his game?
Mate, I mean, I don't know what more you can say about him. He's all Australian in his 3rd season. Yeah, he's been a clear best player for us. So it's just a matter of formality, I think, now. But it'd be interesting to see who comes up second and third. But yeah, no, he was phenomenal in this game as well. Him and McLean really almost got us over the line. So but yeah, it was just it was pleasing to see that he's so consistent. But obviously, in the context of losing, he's a consummate team player, so you can see, he puts the team before any of his personal accolades. So, which you love to see, right? You love to see, and that's why people are saying, already future captain. We've got a lot of good young leaders, but you feel like he's just really come to the fore this year. So, mate, nothing really to add there, obviously, other than you feel his disappointment. I think he's a big Swans fan as well, so you can kind of tell if he's looking grumpy. I think it's fair to say most Swans fans are pretty grumpy. So mate, he was unbelievable again.
Yeah, that's it. I think as you mentioned there, future captain written in the stars. It's a lock-in, I think, at this point. It's just a matter of when, as you said.
And who joins him, I think, yeah.
That's right, who joins him alongside him, yeah. Mate, one point to, just on while you say who joins him, on the quiet, I feel McLean is stepping up. His leadership, the way he does it on the field, the way he speaks on camera too is excellent. I think he's a bit of a smoky for leadership position in the near future.
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay.
1 point to McCartan, mate, holding up that back line up against the best in the year. I think Kerno's kicked over 80 goals this season so far. Granted, 19 of those were against West Coast, but still, nonetheless, he was part of it all. What do you want to say about McCartan?
19 touches at 100%, 12 intercepts, 4 score involvements, which were rebounds, 3 contested marks, 2 second best on ground, 7 1%ers, second best on ground. So, it was just a very solid game. Like he's clearly our number one key defender. Obviously with, as we've already touched on, Melican coming in for body and height support, and then Rampy playing third tall. But, we missed him earlier on this year, as we did Rampy, and we've spoken about the structure and the decimated backline in many podcasts episodes this season, and I'm sure we'll touch on it in the season review. But yeah, he was huge, really, in the game, as you said, coming up against 2 very powerful key forwards, and one sort of out of touch, but the other in career best touch. So. He was one of that other reason really for keeping us in the contest. It was pleasing to see again.
Yeah, and as you mentioned there, look, 12 intercepts in his 19 touches at 100%. That's massive. Like 4 score involvements for a backman is just wild, right? It's just silly. So, yeah, massive stuff from him, as you mentioned there, for all the right reasons. He's just a special guy. Honourable mentions, man. I know when it comes to a loss, especially a big loss like this, it's a bit tough to kind of drag in too many players into this, but a few names you want to mention that probably had a really good game and worthwhile having at least half a point and maybe 3 or 4 Balinese bucks to head their way.
Oh, look, mate, I think Millsy tried hard as always. He was sort of thrown around the ground in a number of roles, and that's sort of he's able to do that. I don't know. Who did you have, mate?
I'd put Blakey up there. I felt he had a great game, albeit missed a quarter of it from being punched in the jaw by someone. But he had a really good game. I felt one-on-ones, leaving his man, grabbing balls off the ground, just doing what Blakey does. And I think when we do the tallies, I don't think he's necessarily going to be up there in terms of game to game. But if you were to ask me right now, who would I be putting up there with best and fairest, I'd be saying Blakey should be taking at least second place. I think he's just been more special for us than we've probably taken for granted, I feel, just given the state of the whole thing.
Mate, I'll add Tommy Papley there. I mean, obviously clearances and contested possession differential, these are things that we're going to continue to talk about until it's fixed. But he really all year has been, that injection of getting it out of the clearance when we need to. And even in this game, he had 8 inside 50s, which was our best. Hayden McLean second with 5. And then, he had 7 clearances, which was best on ground. And then Warner was second best for us on 4. And centre clearances, he had 4, which was best on ground as well. So you could see there was a real concerted effort from Paps in the middle. But then you just, obviously when it comes to goals and behinds, he was 0-1. So, he had a limited impact, I think, but, he was probably playing a bit more of that sort of centre clearance role. But yeah, look, I don't know. Chad was pretty good as well. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no,
Got
that's
it. Flat, mate. Flat.
it's like, well, look, getting to the post game, of course, this ends the season. We came in eighth at the end of the regular season, eighth in the form of post finals as well. A pretty tough season. We touched on a few of the points, and we're going to get into it a whole lot more in the season review. But all in all, push for depth in the back line in particular. And still managed to make it to finals despite all the circumstances that had to be taken to get there. But still managed to blood in a fair amount with the young talent that we had. And I think Horst mentioned, outside of one couple of players, like we're 3 years younger than Collingwood are right now. So we've got plenty of growth ahead of us. We got to the GF last year, of course. We all agreed pretty openly that we were there much earlier than we suspected. But to get another finals push for these kids and the way that they finished off the season, pretty special. So let's see where that ends up. We miss out on finals, so the finals are all kind of getting on. As we record this is post the semi-finals, so we know he's going to be playing in the prelim. Of the teams, you've got Carlton, Brisbane, Collingwood, and GWS. Now, one thing I did want to raise up here, Noddy, and just wanted to get your take on it, as I think you know where mine is, but a lot of fans out there are a little bit perplexed as to whether they're allowed to or not allowed to support GWS in the finals for this year. What's your take on it?
I guess my take is people can do and think whatever they want, but if it comes to me personally, I only follow the Sydney Swans, and then when the Swans drop out, naturally, you might have a team that you would rather win, but it's not in the sense of I'm actively supporting you, unless it was someone against the Bulldogs, probably. But look, I have a pretty firm position on this. I've always been against GWS, having been thrust or created in a centre that's like 10 kilometres from where we are. Like, I don't think that Sydney or New South Wales needed another team in the same city. If you look at Brisbane and Gold Coast, there's enough geographical distance that it works there. If you look at the other interstate teams, South Australia is a stronghold of Aussie rules football. So, two teams in the one city, that's okay. WA as well, Perth and Freo, two teams in the one city, that works when you've got everyone pretty much following the one code. I don't think you really needed to put a team in the same city. You probably would, and I've said this before, you probably would have been better off locating them in Canberra. They spend enough time there. They've got a lot of following there, and they could still get the catchment down there in the Riverina. So what my position is I still don't approve of the AFL's decision to thrust this upon the AFL audience, to create this intercity rivalry. You already know my position on the poorly named Battle of the Bridge. I fucking hate it. It's a shocker, right? There's no bridges in between, right? So let's just drop that. So look, they've created this, and they're not going to undo it. If they could just relocate to Canberra, that'd be great for me. If they relocated to Canberra, if GWS were based in Canberra, my position might change. My point is, in a city where rugby league and it used to be rugby union, but that's a whole different story. In a city where rugby league is the most famous sport, most popular sport, you don't really need the dilution of another team. These are all my personal opinions, right? So everyone's going to disagree with me. That's fine, or some might not. What this means is I'm sort of coming towards my point is I am not supporting GWS. Okay, I think that the growth of the game in New South Wales would have achieved the same thing had they hadn't thrust this two-city rivalry on us, right? I know that ACT is a territory, but it's basically like a little section of New South Wales. So, I think the growth of the game could have still achieved that, and you would have that same sort of vibe in Queensland where you've got the city going for Brisbane, and then you've got another city that's like over an hour away going for Gold Coast. Right. So that being said, I'm not going to support GWS for that reason. That being said, I would much rather see a grand final of the Giants and the Lions, because I would rather see two interstate teams play just to get under the skin of the VFL. The worst possible outcome is Collingwood and Carlton. It will just be an utter VFL wank fest. So in that light, I'm hoping that there are I think everyone's thinking the Lions will probably get the job done at the Gabba against the Blues, but who knows, having seen the Blues last 2 games, right? And I think most people are saying that Collingwood will roll over Giants, but I'm hoping that the Giants can beat the Pies and the Lions beat the Blues, but then the Lions thump the Giants.
Yeah. Okay.
In the grand final.
I take a very different approach to this. I grew up in League Heartland, as you did as well, but I grew up in Western Sydney, where the catchment for GWS effectively is. And growing up playing AFL, there was absolutely nothing going on. Nothing.
Aussie rules.
Aussie rules. Right. There was absolutely nothing going on. So it's for me, having the team in Sydney, for all the reasons you mentioned there, I agree with all of them. I agree with the fact that they were like a boardroom pushed team to kind of make something happen without really thinking it too hard through. And it was a bit of a lazy decision to kind of throw them out there and give them a random name of Greater Western Sydney. Like a lot of the things that they mention, I agree with all of those pieces. Having said that, now that they're here, I am actively supporting GWS to win the comp outside of maybe Brisbane. Between one of those two, I'd 50-50, I'd coin toss it, how I felt about either one of them. For the purposes of the game in New South Wales was growing and then went stagnant. And the game in Queensland is actually kicking off very well and continuing to grow. And a part of that is because COVID seasons, the way the Lions are playing, the way the Gold Coast are playing. For instance, Gold Coast has more members and more attendance for AFL than it does the NRL. So there's a lot of benefits to having GWS spruik its name up to start winning, because when you're a young kid in Campbelltown, Bankstown, Parramatta, Penrith, all of these places that are exclusively in the city but NRL-driven towns, having an Aussie Rules team that's winning is a big factor to not being teased when you're at school or whatever, to kind of start supporting something that you actually want to support. So I'm all for the GWS. I'm all for Swans fans jumping on the GWS back, because I'll be doing the same thing. So for the listeners out there, you've got two not opposing views. I think we're very similar in a lot of spots, but I think I am way more geared to be part of the Orange Tsunami than you are, but for different reasons. But we both agree, bugger the VFL. We want East Coast teams winning. Definitely we want a Lions GWS grand final. I think that'd be good for the growth of the game, because Carlton versus Collingwood is not going to grow the game in New South Wales and Queensland. We know that. So let's just move on with that as far as I'm concerned.
I'll say to your point there, look, I understand what you're saying, but I just can't help but feel, and again, like if you're growing up in the 80s and the 90s, definitely there's the grassroots support for, Aussie Rules out in the western suburbs of Sydney was not going to be there. But had the AFL not created this team because they just went, Parramatta, that's the second biggest city in Sydney, let's put them there, right? There's no way of knowing how active the Swans would have been in developing these areas of Sydney. I mean, there is really, because, there's been an improvement in grassroots support. This is one of the things that the AFL can hang its hat on. Like rugby union's gone backwards, right? And rugby league has worked hard as well. But again, it's traditional heartland here. But what my point is, if there was no GWS team in Parramatta or Homebush or even further west, why couldn't the Swans have continued to develop pathways there? It's just, that's what I see. I think the reason it's good in Queensland is because there's geographical distance between Brisbane and Gold Coast. If you're from Ipswich, which is effectively Parramatta of Queensland, your closest team is the Lions, and you go for the Lions. And no one goes, why doesn't Ipswich have a team? Right? It's just, that's how I see it. I think it's we're in this situation. It's not going to get reversed. I can hear what you're saying. I just think there was. No, I don't think there is, mate. I tell
you this, mate. I think with the Swans in existence and the NRL in existence, the Swans. Let me rephrase. The AFL was always seen in Western Sydney as being more of like the uppity part of the world, the ritzier part of the world. Like, we know that's not necessarily the truth. We know that the way the grassroots came from South Melbourne and they came over here and built themselves out of nothing, basically. And we'll get into that in a moment with the talk about Barassi. But there's always been the only way you would have been able to start turning some of these fans, I feel, in some of these places around the Sydney side, would be to market a team as the underdogs, as the gritty, annoying younger brother underdogs, in order to get themselves moving forward. And I think they're doing a good job of that now. So this is all theoretical, of course. We're both kind of coming up with ideas of how we feel about things, and it's a lot of emotion, granted. But I think that's why it works a bit, but it's not been great. And I think them pulling all of the resources they have from New South Wales and not really investing anymore is a major part of it. It's not doing anyone any favours. But if we want to grow the game in New South Wales and Queensland, having GWS be a part of that is good for the game, nonetheless. Which I know you agree with that, but it's just a kind of a final point.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I just, it's hard to compare because it's like saying there's 10 clubs in Victoria. You don't need to grow the game because it's the game that's played. And then there's 10 clubs or thereabouts of rugby league in New South Wales. And, there's two Western Sydney, powerhouses, Penrith and Parramatta. So they've got their traditional pathways for the, so I get your point. You've got to have a team to follow in order to get you to play the game. But I still, it's impossible to walk this back because the damage has been done. They were created, and they're there now, and they've lost a flag, and they're pushing for a flag now under two different eras. But what doesn't change is they've been fed, in order for them to have success, they've been fed high draft picks time and time again. We have a history that we've taken from South Melbourne, so we're technically not the first Sydney team created in Sydney. I think that's a stupid point that people are putting out there. But I think that, you would have achieved the growth of the game if you centred a team in Newcastle, and then that's the feeder club for Northern New South Wales. Sydney Swans, that is everything in Sydney Metro. So that takes in Western Sydney, Blue Mountains, South, and then you have Canberra, which takes in Albury-Wodonga, Riverina. And that, I think, that would achieve the same growth in New South Wales that I think you're talking about. And if the Swans bow out, I'd be more likely to support the Newcastle, whatever they're called, and the Canberra Giants than this stupid Western Sydney. I mean, they don't even call us Sydney, mate. They call us South Melbourne. I mean, it's cheeky, it's tongue-in-cheek, I get it. But it's fucking, it's fun. It's bullshit, right? Yeah. Is what it is. Well, okay, so... Yeah, go on. No, I'm just saying this has become the key talking point of this episode. But I love it. I love it because you're right. There's been a lot of back and forth on the socials. I am in the camp of I'm not going to support anyone other than my team, but I might have a favourite for the reasons I've explained. But I can also hear what you're saying, although I don't agree with it because I think growth of Aussie Rules or AFL in New South Wales could have been achieved if they didn't force a rivalry on us.
Look, I think it was the rivalry was a necessity in my mind, but I think what everyone's heard just out there is we agree in a lot of things between us in terms of what GWS means for the game, as you mentioned there, the damage has been done. But I think they're two perfectly good talking points and two perfectly good situations. And as you said at the beginning there, Noddy, you're allowed to do whatever you want with your supporting.
Yeah.
And any Swans fan out there that's questioning whether you're allowed to or whether their mate is allowed to, you're allowed to do whatever you want. So go out there, support who you want, don't support who you want, have the feelings you have, and it's all good.
What I find funniest, Chris, I'll just add to this, lastly, is regardless of all the very logical, reasonable points we've come up with, people don't want to support GWS because of Toby Green. I think that's the funny... I think he's a grub, and therefore that's the funniest one. I think
he's a funny player. Like, he's obviously transformed himself this year, and I mean, he's one of those players. And I've mentioned it as well in the past on those forums. To be like, yeah, but you'd love him if he was on your team. And you get people like, I would hate him to be on my team. I'm like, would ya? A guy who can single-handedly win you a game. You know what I mean? And the quality and class that he is, and the captaincy that he's put into now. Like, I disagree. I think he's a very credible player. Yeah, he's a grub, but. If we can get that out of his game like he has this year, he's a pretty special talent.
Has he got it out of his game though? I mean, I remember him elbowing and kneeing Florent when we played them, but
he's got most of it out of his game. Let's just
he's better at hiding it.
the reason we can talk about all of this about the GWS thing and the way that Sydney is right now, and the reason that we exist here in Sydney is a big part of it is due to our fantastic Ron Barassi, who unfortunately passed away a few days ago. And is famous for a number of reasons, not only being one of the best players to ever play the game, also being one of the best coaches to ever play the game, and just being a special talent that would arguably be probably the AFL's most important figure in modern time. Noddy, anything you want to say there before I crank on to a couple of his successes?
Oh no, mate. Just obviously, it's sad for the industry and obviously his family. But yeah, we have a lot to owe to him for our early days for the Swans and the growth of the game at that point. He's obviously a legend and is going to be dearly missed. So obviously sad, but yeah, incredible career and impact he's had on the game.
Yep, 100%. Look, in terms of what he did for the Swans, just quickly go over it. 59 games for the Swans that he coached during probably the toughest times. He came in for like round 7 of 1993. Ended up getting us immediately being a little bit competitive. Ended up getting a 1 win in that first year. The following year with 4 wins. The year after that, in 1995, we got 8 wins, so double that. And then in 1996, of course, we came in second in that grand final that you were at, Noddy. So he was massive to the game. And if we just quickly look at it too, memberships when he took over were just scraping over 3,000. When he'd left, it was 9,000, so tripled. 6,000, doubled when he left. And then after 1996, it's not been under 20,000 ever since then. So if you want to get an idea of how impactful he was to just transform a team into being competitive immediately within a few years of him taking over, he is the picture of that. And I think the Swans club and the Swans fans owe that gentleman a lot of gratitude. And I know there's not a single bad thing said about him. He's an amazing talent. And he has a lot to give to the Swans community. He had done for his career. So Vale to Ron Barassi, probably the best who had ever done it on and off the field. An amazing, amazing talent. Just quickly, we've got a few things to go ahead with. Obviously, we're recording this review of the Elimination Final as the last review for the season for the men's. We also have the draft and trade targets episode that we're going to be putting out there. We've got a season review that is probably a week or two away. And of course, we are going through a review of every single AFLW game of the season, as well as we follow the girls through their second year and immediately looking competitive straight away. So very happy with that. So if you are interested in making sure you get all your Swannies news, even in this off season, please make sure you follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just follow us wherever you get your socials. It does make a difference to the channel, and we very much appreciate the growth of the channel for this year. It's been very special for us. Well, Noddy, it's been great to chat with you. We'll have a chat very, very soon. But until then, up the Bloods and can you Swanee?